Assalamu alaikum. I'm your host Reem bin Mohammed Rafi, and here is your YouTube channel Zamir Universal. I'm going to talk to you about today that the unrest and the various conflicts around the globe, where do they originate, where they are going, who is behind all this, and how come we had balance and peace, which is all gone. Who, in fact, is the responsible?
नाज़रीन, हिजबुल्लाह के इसराइल पर हमले शिद्दत इख्तियार कर गए हैं और इतने हमले किए गए हैं हिजबुल्लाह की जानब से कि इसराइल का हुलिया बिगाड़ के रख दिया है। अभी कुछ देर पहले उनकी सबसे इंपॉर्टेंट बंदरगाहों पर हमले किए गए हैं और पूरे बॉर्डर पर तमाम जगहों पर 130 किलोमीटर का बॉर्डर है, तमाम जगहों पर क्लैशेस जारी हैं और दर्जनों की तादाद में इसराइलियों की आज हलाकतें हुई हैं और इसराइली मीडिया के मुताबिक आज का दिन उनके लिए सबसे भारी था और इसीलिए अब इसराइली आर्मी सबसे एक भारी और खौफनाक हमले की तैयारी कर रही है वापस लेबनान पर। तो जंग बहुत बड़े स्केल पर इस वक्त जा चुकी है और इसके साथ साथ जापान की एंट्री हुई है और जापान ने फलस्तीन की आजाद रियासत का क्याम का मुतालबा कर दिया है। जी हां, जापान जो कि सबसे एक बड़ा इत्तेहादी समझा जाता है इसराइल का, अमेरिका का, उसने अब फलस्तीन की आजाद रियासत का मुतालबा कर दिया और यह कहा है कि हम इसके लिए आगे बढ़ने को और इसमें किरदार अदा करने के लिए तैयार है। इसके साथ साथ साउथ अफ्रीका जो कि एक बड़ा इत्तेहादी था, उसने नेतन्याहू की गिरफ्तारी का मुतालबा सामने रख दिया है। तो ये अहम तरीन तफसीलात हैं। गजा में इस वक्त क्या सूरत हाल है, पिछली वीडियोस में हम आपको लगातार बता रहे हैं कि किस तरह टैंक्स हॉस्पिटल्स के करीब पहुंच चुके हैं और हॉस्पिटल्स के बाहर लाशें ही लाशें पड़ी हैं और उनको दफनाने वाला कोई नहीं है। अभी इस वक्त वहां पर क्या सूरत हाल है, जो डिफाइनिंग मोमेंट है गजा का, कि अगर अभी इंटरव्यू नहीं किया जाता तो हजारों शहादतें हो सकती हैं, हजारों इंजर्ड जो इस वक्त अस्पतालों में है, अगर अभी उनको मदद ना पहुंची तो वो सब शहीद हो सकते हैं। वहां पर क्या हालात हैं वो आपके साथ शेयर करेंगे, लेकिन सबसे पहले हिजबुल्लाह के हवाले से बात कर लेते हैं। आज का दिन जब से ये कॉन्फ्लिक्ट शुरू हुआ है,
And how can the world deal with it? Let me just start with the present superpower or the United States of America and give you a brief overview that the mistakes this country made and when it started to make, how it affected the global peace and how it affected every country in the world. What should be done? Why should not the whole world concentrate on this rogue and so-called superstate somewhere which went wrong? So long this nation was running according to the constitution written by its elders, there was no problem. But the problem started when Thomas Jefferson, one of the presidents, he wanted to join the French Revolution and help take that revolution around the globe. People felt that he had lost his mind because why should America, which is protected by two great oceans of the world, on one side is Atlantic and the other side is Pacific, is the safest country and has and should be having an agenda of its own to manufacture, to develop, to excel in technology, in science, in research. Instead, the president thinking of joining a revolution for another country was something abnormal, unacceptable, and was opposed to thin air. So, America was saved, or the world was saved from a great disaster. Now, what happens is when the thinking in United States of America, in some corners, started that war of interventions can be useful to get the oil running so that the economy of United States should be kept as it is and the standard of living, which was a misnomer. Now, this, I think, export of Western liberal order or trying to poke our nose or poke United States nose into the French Revolution or Napoleon was one of the earlier big mistakes which were opposed, were unconstitutional, and could not take off. And when they could not, because there was a resistance, domestic resistance from the Americans, and Americans first, American for Americans. That is what was, I think, in the Constitution, and that is what public believed in it, and that was what was in the center of the goals achievable. Now, when United States of America lost and had no strategic policy of her own for her own interest, and instead starting to poke its nose into others' affairs, that's where these things started to go wrong. But they were kept in control. As for instance, after in 1956, Eisenhower said no to the Israelis, to people who wanted, with French and British, to control the Suez Canal. And it was this decision that kept the peace in the world and stability and respect for the United States of America. Then in 1967, Lyndon Johnson also said no to the Israelis when the Israelis wanted to annex some parts of Egypt. In 1973, Nixon also told quite strongly to the Israelis that there's no way that you can annex or keep the areas like Sinai, and you have to return back. And the result was the Camp David Accord, which was a peace accord between Israel and Egypt.
No ceasefire, no votes. And in November, we remember. Those were two chants we heard Saturday in Washington at the largest rally in U.S. history for Palestinian rights. Protesters denounced President Biden for refusing to support a ceasefire in Gaza while sending more arms to Israel as it continues its month-long bombardment that's killed over 10,000 Palestinians, including 4,000 children. Polls show Biden's support among Arab Americans is plummeting. This is Nihad Awad, the head of CARE, that's the Council on American Islamic Relations, speaking at Saturday's rally.
No ceasefire, no votes. No ceasefire, no votes. No votes in Michigan. No votes in Arizona. No votes in Georgia. No votes in Nevada. No votes in Wisconsin. No votes in Pennsylvania. No votes in Ohio. No votes for you anywhere. If you do not call for a ceasefire now, we will make our voices heard more and more. In November, we remember. In November, we remember.
Nihad Awad, head of CARE, said he was speaking in his own capacity. We are joined now by Jim Zogby, president of the Arab American Institute, joining us from Washington, D.C. It's great to have you with us. if you can talk about these figures that I'm sure the White House is looking at carefully. In 2020, President Biden had something like 59 support of the Arab American community. Right now, it's at something like 17%. James Zogby, if you can talk about Biden's stance right now on Israel and Gaza.
Thanks, Amy. It's been a long time since we've been together, and I appreciate the opportunity to speak with you. Look, the poll is one that we did to get a read on the community. I have never seen in the 27 years we've been polling, my brother and I have been polling Arab Americans. We never saw a movement this dramatic over this short a period of time. The last time we polled Arab Americans was just a few months ago, and the drop since then has been even more precipitous than the drop since 2020. This issue resonates. It's big. It's important. It also is part of a general national trend. Arab Americans are not immune from what the rest of the culture is feeling, and that is that President Biden just is not in control of his own presidency and how he is being portrayed to the American people and to the world. They didn't elect a Reaganite foreign policy advocate, a neocon who was fighting for freedom there to have freedom here, that kind of rhetoric that comes from the White House. They voted for somebody to focus on a whole bunch of domestic issues to bring domestic peace and tranquility after 4 years of Donald Trump. And that's not what they've gotten. And I think that, coupled with the Gaza situation, most certainly is driving these negative numbers. They are deeply disappointed with the position he's taken on this conflict, and they just are jumping ship.
And Jim Zogby, could you talk about some other aspects of the poll, what the support for a ceasefire was, and also whether there were gender or age or religious differences in those you polled?
What was really significant was that across the board, when you get numbers that high, a flip that high, or numbers in the 70% range on several questions like support for a ceasefire, or how important is the Palestinian issue to you, or how disappointed are you with the president's performance on this issue, all of those numbers were 2/3 or greater. When you get numbers that great, you expect across the board to see the crosstabs reading that way, and we did. There was virtually no difference in terms of majorities, regardless of religion, regardless of whether born here or immigrant, or a gender or age. Pretty much across the board, there's frustration and deep disappointment with this president. And the question I keep getting asked is, can Biden win him back? The visceral reaction to this issue is so great that in order to do that, something dramatic has to come from the White House. And I'm not sure that the president has the wherewithal to do it. Look, I've heard two things from people at the White House. The one is they're not going to vote for Donald Trump because they don't want, they don't want back what he was doing during his 4 years. And so they'll come around in a year. I told them that. When I heard that, I said, that's insulting and dismissive. You have to earn that vote. They might just as well stay home. They might vote for Cornel West. They might just not vote at all. And it's not a given that young Arab American women who want control over their bodies and their health care, that older Arab Americans who want protection for their Medicare or an expansion of health care, it's not clear that they're going to make the decision to vote at all if they don't have something to vote for. It worked the last time. Vote for me because I'm not the other guy. I'm not quite sure it'll work this time. And I've got an article coming out in The Nation tomorrow that makes the point that it's not just Arab Americans who are affected this way. It's young people, it's progressive Jews, it's Black, Latino, Asian voters. There's a significant decline that this president is encountering across the board. And Gaza is playing into it. It is a sort of a canary in the coal mine issue. It's one that sort of is the speaking to a broader sense of dissatisfaction, and the White House has to get a handle on that and not just dismiss it.
And speaking of
has been going on up until now. The things started to change when, after the Second World War, Harry Truman, I think the guilty here, the president which destroyed the very basic thinking and the very basic principles which I think got respect for United States of America, and people felt this was a land of opportunity. That was lost and destroyed by Harry Truman. Now, Harry Truman had a tunnel vision, and what he wanted was that there should be unlimited amount of money for the Democrats so that they can remain in the government, win elections, and the best source for them was the Jewish people. So this is why it carved a small part in the beginning of Palestine and created this illegitimate state of Israel. To some extent, I think he did benefit, the Democrats did benefit from this, but that money kept pouring and increasing. And now we are at a stage that we have absolutely no authority, neither moral nor political. In fact, Netanyahu, or the present Prime Minister of Israel, and many before him, have a much greater control over Hill than the president. Or at the moment, Netanyahu has much more control over Hill than Joe Biden. When you have a situation like that, you can understand that Israel is now like a spoiled child and under control of no one, gets everything by the money it invests in Congress and Senate. So the people are obliged to say yes to his atrocities, to his barbarism, to his apartheid, to his ethnic cleansing and genocide. This was completely against the principles of United States people. And this is why in Bosnia the ethnic cleansing was opposed and the Americans bombed the Serbs and restored that. Then how come we suddenly change from peace and opposing apartheid and ethnic cleansing and genocide? We suddenly have been bought and purchased by the Jews, a small number of people living in that smooth, tiny area, not even worth of a state, but was created by force by the assistance of Harry Truman. It was his greed and the greed of the Democratic Party or Democrats that we should have our hand on this unlimited source of money. And you all know it that all the money in the United States and Europe is controlled by the Jews. From Starbucks to all the technological spying tools are owned, all these industrial complexes are owned by the Jews in the world. So the whole money is with them. They decide even at what value the dollars to float. They decide which area to invade. They decide even that who should govern in South Africa, South America, and Middle East. Now, this is what is the present problem, and that is not just limited to the barbarism we are seeing for the last 70 years in Palestine, in the West Bank, in the Gaza Strip. Now the babies being murdered, the hospitals being bombed, and I think the whole city, 2.2 million people being bombed and destroyed and killed. Electricity cut, water supply cut, food denied, people 2.1 million caged like animals, and we are supporting that rogue and illegitimate state and losing all our respect throughout the world. This is just a little demonstration how Anthony Blinken has been insulted and kept waiting and had absolutely no respect, neither as a neutral broker nor even as an American, which once used to be a superpower. So, in fact, the United States of America is now being controlled, or Hill is being controlled, or the White House is being controlled, or the government is being controlled by this small group of people who are Zionists, who are the most cruel, and they have surpassed Hitler in their atrocities and barbarism. And we are shying away now to get the blame. In fact, our hands are soaked with the blood of those innocent babies which have been murdered in Gaza at the moment, and they are being murdered day and night right now. Now, these are not my own words. Colonel Douglas McGregor, who has been in the past advisor to the Secretary of Defense, he at the moment is heading an organization, Our Country at Our Choice. Now, this is the result of having no strategic policy for America and just selling ourselves for the financial reward interests to Israel or to this Zionist or this Jewish country, and are being insulted. And I think most Americans feel at the moment very uneasy. As you can see the demonstration throughout the world against that, not only against the Jews, the most hated, whose graves were dug. It was never any Americans were hated or American graves were dug or they were spitted upon. It is due to this financial interest, unlimited amount of money, the greed of the Democrats, which has led us to this state today. The start, I told you the mistakes the other presidents made, the United States, which has brought to the lowest as far as the moral fabric is concerned to the American society, American people, which they don't deserve. They deserve better. But since we are not following our constitution, we do not have our national strategic policy. That is why it is our greed for unlimited money and to keep ourselves elected in the Congress and the Senate. That's what is the root cause of this. In nutshell, I have given you in this small, brief, I think, a vlog that why America keeps on committing, keeps on supporting, and being insulted, and obviously it will be facing a disaster. And instead of being a partner in peace, is a partner in crime. And one day, these war crimes, America will be summoned and will face the consequences along with this rogue state. With these words, that the Americans will open their eyes, run their own country as they've done before, and get rid of this friendship and they spit on this unlimited money. Money cannot buy you respect, money can't buy you anything. And have your own national interest and national policy and generate your own money. And there is no way that you can be a good and a super country only if you get rid of them and not you follow the war of interventions in another country, in other cultures, in other religions. With these words, I thank you. यूनिवर्सल टेलीविजन को सब्सक्राइब करना ना भूलें। उसके बाद बेल बटन पे क्लिक करें और अपने कमेंट्स के सेक्शन में अपने कीमती जो ख्यालात का इजहार ज़रूर